Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Dan and I'm here to bring you another FPL video. In this one, we're going to be exploring 10 differentials to make your game week 1 drafts. We've got 1 goalkeeper, 3 defenders, 3 midfielders and 3 forwards to get stuck into. Plenty of data to talk about and my thoughts as well. If you are new to the channel, then please do consider subscribing. Plenty of content coming your way to help you out with your drafting. And of course as well, please do give a thumbs up if you enjoy the content, guys. Let's try and reach 50 likes to help this channel growth. And then let's jump into the video. So first and foremost, we do have the goalkeeper option here in Johnston. £4.5 million and 1.1% ownership. I think criminally underrated, to be honest, based on that price point. Of course, we've seen Jordan Pickford, Leno, Flecken, a couple of other individuals that have been a lot more popular than him. But once I started to really dig into the kind of XGC data of teams, I spotted that Crystal Palace, I think, have just gone a little bit, like I say, under the radar for a lot of managers. They were actually the 4th best team for XGC across the whole season. Now, you can obviously take that with a pinch of salt. We never usually hold on to a player for the whole entire season. But Palace's defensive numbers were only essentially beaten by City, Newcastle and Arsenal. They were the 4th best for XGC. So I genuinely think that they, like I say, have gone under the radar and this man can fit the bill for that £4.5 million slot. Of course, the points below that you see here, the clean sheets, everything, this is based on 9 starts as well. He only really came into the Crystal Palace side as the number 1 the back end of the season. In that time frame, they managed 3 clean sheets. He got 26 saves and 5 bonus points. So I think when you take that data and you multiply it, of course, on average, I would say by 4 or 5 to get the full season, that's not a bad outing. 140 points for a £4.5 million goalkeeper-ish, something along those lines would be very, very strong. So I think it could potentially be that set and forget £4.5 million. So very, very strong pick. I think as we go into the first defender then here, Pedro Porro, 5 million, 4.2% ownership. Not sure about the game week 1 and 2, of course. I think that's probably the big put off with him and why he's only 4.2% owned at this point. But I really do think that from game week 3 onwards is when we'll see Spurs more than likely kick on, and maybe there's some really strong outputs from this man. I think his numbers are fantastic, really attacking. His finishing is fantastic with the goals he did score, but 3 goals, 3 assists in the time that he played. Like I said, I just think there's maybe that element of risk in those first few weeks. But if you're somebody that's actually, a little bit, I want to go against the template for a couple of picks at least, maybe he can, sort of fill in the role of a Gabriel, for example. If you've got Gabriel and Estepinian, like I have in my current draft, that price point can easily be swapped from Gabriel to Porro instead. Maybe you want Ramsdale in goal to cover Arsenal's defence anyway. So there's lots of different connotations that you can do in your draft to make sure you've covered individuals you want. Like I say, I think this man will fit the bill across the board of those first 5 fixtures. I think overall they're very positive, and I think that's going to be a fantastic differential option, if I'm honest. As we go into the next defensive option, then we do have this man, Pau Torres. Of course, the data shown is relevant to La Liga, and I had to manually essentially tally up the points he would have scored roughly. So I put 97 points with the asterisk there for that reason. I haven't included bonus points. You could maybe throw in an extra 10 just on that basis. Not very great attacking numbers, though, only scoring 1 goal in the campaign. But that being said, out of the 34 starts, very, very strong outings overall. We know, of course, he's already played under Emery at Villarreal. He's now moved to Aston Villa in the Premier League. I think he's going to slot in fantastically well to this system. And at £4.5 million, guys, at the end of the day, for someone like this, you want a solid rotationable option to cover you for, essentially those clean sheets, maybe an attacking option to some degree, but really it's all about cover for any injury or a favourable fixture, let's say, for this individual. So game week 2, game week 3, game week 5, very good fixtures here. It's only really game week 1 and 4 I would probably try to avoid with him. So first opening fixtures, I think he's a very strong, cheap enabler. As we then go into our final defensive option here, is Andrew Robertson. Some may argue that the price point of £6.5 million is a little bit awkward to get to, and I am somewhat inclined to agree with that. I do feel like that extra money is probably better spent in the midfield with so many options now. However, that being said, if you are somebody that has Trent in your draft, maybe consider taking Trent down to Robertson if you still want an attacking Liverpool fullback in your squad and save that £1.5 million. move it into somewhere else in your squad and see what you can do with it. Because I genuinely think at 3.8% ownership, he may not be able to match Trent, but I think he'll be very, very close. Last season, I actually started with Kyle Walker over João Cancelo. There was maybe some argument there that it was a little bit of a risk, but it did actually pay off. A lot of the clean sheets were covered. Of course, he didn't have the attacking output, but Cancelo didn't either. So sometimes I do think we get maybe a little bit blindsided by attacking output for defenders. If Trent, of course, goes and blanks from an attacking point of view and Robbo gets the clean sheets as well, then you've just saved up 1.5 million to the Trent owners, right? That's kind of the logic that I've used to put him here. He did score 121 points last season, though. That's still, again, nothing to be sniffed at. I mean, 8 assists across the board. And of course, Trent himself only scoring 156 points. So I say only, it's an additional 30 plus points. But he also got 11 assists and 2 goals. So a few more attacking output, but is it really worth that 1.5 million? I'll let you guys be the judge of that. So let's move in to the midfielders. We do have this man here, Jared Bowen, first up. 7 million, I think this price point is really interesting as well. I think a lot of managers do prefer the 6.5 million because the players in that bracket are very strong. And I do think they'll probably match someone like Jared Bowen. That being said, though, his pre-season data is looking fantastic. He's part of almost everything for West Ham at the moment. At 7 million, it's a price point that covers the likes of Sancho, Sterling, Richarlison, people like that. So essentially, yes, he could be moved on, let's say, if it doesn't work out. He can also be downgraded to the 6.5 million slot as well. So maybe starting with him isn't so painful. Those first 4 weeks are a bit of a mixed bag, but by game week 5, maybe you're happy to move him on and a different 6.5 million or a 7 million midfielder emerges. So I don't hate him as a game week 1 pick at all. I think 5.8%, again, ownership is absolutely criminal for someone as consistent as Bowen. But let me know your thoughts below on starting with him. Then we go into the second midfielder here, Solly March. Talking about criminally underrated, I think this guy at 3.2% ownership at the same price as Mitoma doesn't make any sense. His numbers are slightly better. His output was very, very similar. I just think maybe there was a bit of bias towards the back end of the season where because Solly March was kind of nursing a bit of a medium-term injury, maybe the eye test has just thrown us off as managers a little bit and we just all flocked to the template pick of Mitoma. I feel like March is absolutely, he's got to warrant a position or at least an opportunity to get into our squads because he has less competition on that side, you could argue, for Brighton anyway. And I just think 3.2% ownership is really tempting me to swap Mitoma directly for him. I think he could definitely match, if not supersede, what Mitoma achieves. So again, let me know what your thoughts are on him. But I think by far he's my most favourite differential, on this video. Then we have Son, 9 million price point. So not many individuals at this point, but Rashford and him is pretty much the kind of competition for each other, right? I think I'm more than likely going to start with Marcus Rashford, but I'm more than happy to concede the fact that if Man United aren't looking great or if he doesn't start the season off with a bang, I'm more than happy to move him straight onto Son from game week 3 because I think, again, as with Pedro Porro, those fixtures look like something could really turn the heat on at that point. So more than happy to go with him, I think, from game week 3. Maybe a little bit riskier to go from him on game week 1, but still a fantastic option. Last season's stats, you can see underneath there, not the same output that we've seen of previous seasons from him by any stretch of the imagination. 152 points is not the heights that he got to before. He's pretty much been over 200 points before that consistently. So to be about 50 points, 70 points shy of where he usually is quite large. So let's see what happens with him. I think if Harry Kane moves on as well, there's maybe another topic there to discuss about how influential Kane is to his output. So maybe there's an argument that you can say he becomes worse. But let's keep an eye on him. I think he's a fantastic player. He's very, very disciplined. And I think he's come out and obviously said as well that he's looking to improve this season phenomenally. So let's keep an eye on him. Finally then, let's move into the forward lines. We've got Darwin Núñez first up. Maybe again, a little bit of a controversial pick here, but and at 9.8%, you could maybe argue he's not a full differential, but the reality is there are multiple midfielders, so it's easier to maybe get a differential. With forwards, it's a little bit more slim picking, so it's harder to pick out those differentials. 7.5 million, really like his price point. I like the fixtures as well from an attacking perspective. Newcastle in 3 could be a little bit tricky, but I do like Chelsea in game week 1 still, even under Poch. Bournemouth in game week 2 is probably the most kind of, I suppose, enticing fixture, right, you could say, for owning him. The only problem I have with him is the competition that Liverpool have in that front line now. You've got Gakpo, you've got Jota, you've got Diaz, you've got Salah, you've got, of course, Darwin Nunez as well. They can all rotate into different positions. So let's see what happens. I think his XG, it needs to start getting converted, really, to really consider him an option. I think the kind of caveat to that, though, is that the second season of when he was at Benfica was a really strong one for him. And I'm anticipating that the same pattern is going to emerge for him this season. I think he's going to have a stronger season. He's going to be better. He's going to convert more. So fingers crossed that happens for the Liverpool fans, of course. But let's see. Let's see. I think he's a fantastic differential. Moving into the next striker here then, it is this man Wissa. Not much competition really at that price point. You could say Calvert-Lewin and Ferguson, if he emerges as an option, could potentially come in, but I really do like him as that alternative to Mbeumo. I think that, we've seen in pre-season, he's clearly playing in the number 9 role. He's 3.9% owned, and those fixtures in 2, 3, and 4 look really, really enticing, right? He scored 111 points in the last campaign. That's registering 7 goals and 4 assists. And that is only out of 16 starts from 38 games. So, of course, he wasn't necessarily nailed, of course, last season, right? Which is why it's maybe a bit of a strange pick to go in with this season. But the reality is Ivan Toney isn't there until January. So he doesn't really have as much competition to worry about. And I genuinely think at 0.5 million cheaper to Mbeumo, he could be a really strong option. He's made a couple of my drafts. Don't know about yours, guys, but let me know in the comments below what you think about him as an option. And finally, we do have this man, Alvarez. Now, this is, again, another little bit of a controversial pick just because he's 2.8% owned for a reason, I guess, and that is more to do with rotation than the actual output from him, right? He's 6.5 million. So you could argue if you put him into that second City attacker bracket of other midfielders like Grealish, Foden, yes, Alvarez is a forward, but he's 1 million cheaper than those individuals. And his stats aren't too far away. Now, he had a lot less starts, even then, of course, the likes of Phil Foden. Foden had 22, Alvarez had 13 starts. But out of those 13 starts, this is the points that he managed to accrue. 103, 9 goals, 3 assists with 14 bonus points. Out of 13 starts, guys, that's really quite fantastic. It's a really ridiculous points per match metric. And I think, to be honest, at 6.5 million, he's got to come into our thinking at some point. With the likes of Gundogan and Mahrez now moving on, I genuinely think that we'll see more of him this season. You could argue we can also see more of Phil Foden as well, but if you wanted to save £1 million, maybe, just maybe, Alvarez could be the one. So that's going to wrap up the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, as always. Like I mentioned, if we can get this video to 50 likes, that would be absolutely fantastic. So please support the channel in that way. If you did enjoy the content and you want to keep up to date with future videos releasing, please do consider subscribing to the channel. It's completely free, and I'll be by your side all season long. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I will no doubt see you in another video very soon. Take care.